Ronald Reagan used to ask the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? In this case, are you better off than you were in 6? And the answer is, the country is definitely better off than we were when I came into office. But
do you think people feel it?
They don't feel it. And the reason they don't feel it is because incomes and wages are not going up. There's solutions to that.
Well, the president says he is turning most things around. He's just not getting credit for it, and that's why he thinks voters will come around to Democrats in November. Former Carter pollster Pat Caddell says that better off line may have worked for the Gipper against his boss back then. He's not too sure about this president right now.
Well, because, you know, a quarter of young men basically are unemployed. All of the studies show that whatever gains have been made in income have all gone to basically the top 10% or higher. And that most middle-class people, particularly younger men, are being slaughtered in terms of jobs and how much money they're making. Most families, 90% of the families in the country, are worse off. Literally, in real fact, they know that. And then you have problems like the Fed saying, oh, inflation isn't bad because we don't count food and fuel, right, which is what everyone else counts, you know. So the answer is, he can say what he wants. The problem is, they don't believe it. And that
but he is right on a technical basis.
On a technical basis,
where we were 6 years in the middle of the meltdown,
depends on
we've gone back.
Oh, the meltdown, no doubt. But
that falls on deaf ears. So does it hurt him in a few weeks?
I think so. I think because people measure their own personal experiences. That's what's happening in this election right now. I mean, we're all waiting to see all these huge undecideds where they go. They're either not, as I said last week, they're either not going to vote or they're going to move Republican. And you start seeing some of these states like Iowa and Michigan and Colorado slightly edging more and more, even though the Republicans haven't, as I think, nationalized the election the way they should.
All right, now, assuming Republicans do gain in the House, some argue, I think you're among them, there's a good shot at doing so in the Senate, whatever gains they have at 2010, as an example, are short-lived. They're not mentioning things like tax cuts. They're not mentioning things that used to be very popular 4 years ago when the Tea Party made them a majority in the House. Why not?
Well, because for some reason they can't. They haven't had no narrative in 2012. Remember, the Tea Party's produced the narrative in 2010. The Republican Party had, in my opinion, no narrative in 12, particularly with Obamacare or the president being a disappointment. In 2014, the Republicans have abandoned debt. They've abandoned tax cuts. All of these things, and they're now hanging on his weak leadership, his low ratings, but they're not doing it. It's interesting, though. There are some places where that's different.
Well, let me ask you on this, are you better off than you were? Let's say in the presidential election 2 years away, whoever the Democratic nominee is going to argue through you are better off than you were then.
Let me say, look, when you have, let me just cite the Wall Street Journal posted in my own. When you have 60% of the country that says the country's in decline, 76% who say their children will have a lesser life than we did, which is breaking the fundamental American social contract. You have a majority of people say if you work hard and play by the rules, you will not get ahead in this society. We're talking about an overview that's much larger than what happened. And by the way, people are saying, oh yeah, when we bailed out the banks, bailed out everybody, and no one went to jail. What we have in this country, what's missing in this election, except for the Kansas, which we were going to talk about, but I want to tell you, Selena Zito today, who's quite an interesting reporter, she actually travels around the country and talks to ordinary people, writes a column about it. She's a Pittsburgh Tribune reporter, and she wrote The Lament of the Voters of Sunday, in which she said, voters keep sending Washington a message. Washington thinks it's a verification of what they're doing, and in fact it's a repudiation. And now we've got these record levels of alienation. And what's interesting, when I talk about this undecided, which is the high teen, undecided and third-party candidates are getting lots of votes. But in Kansas, where there's no Democrat, where you have an independent Greg Orman who is, you would think is new.
That's weird.
No, I'll tell you why. Because he's running against both parties. I keep saying there is a missing election. And the undecided, even though he's an unknown new guy, even though there's no Democrat and he's an independent, you think voters would say, oh my gosh, we better look at this. Do
we know who he would vote with?
No, he has not. He has said he wants new leadership. He's not going to vote with either one. He's being being carefully coy. But the point is, everyone in Washington says that's the issue. He's saying there's a different issue, and he is way ahead according to the public polls out there,
That's wild.
going from 7% in May to almost a majority in August.
I wonder if that
That's
says something
amazing.
about the strength of a third-party movement.
Yes,
Spirit.
I think that's going to be
If
the
given the
election.
chance.
We're not. That may be the real. Even though we have a Democrat-Republican off-year election,
Yeah.
that may be the tell for the future. That may be, as Teddy White once said, there are always things that you can tell coming from what happens in an election that doesn't dominate yet.
All right, and I would put both of you in the same iconic image.
Well, he was a great guy.
He really was.
I loved
Making him a
him,
president.
and he was a great mentor.
As are you. As are you.
Well, now I'm old enough to be a mentor.
But now
that's
you're
what
an
I do
old
for
mentor.
you.
You're an
I'm
old
an old
mentor.
mentor for you.
Well, I like that because I'm
know.
old myself.
Yeah,
So
there's
you're
two
like
of us.
Methuselah mentoring Methuselah. All right.
Two of
Patrick
us.
Cadell, thank you
Right.
very, very much. And he will be helping us out election night on FPN, no doubt, to mentor this fool through it all. But he really is good. Stuff he sees long before most people. 7,000 miles from the U.S., but think these Hong Kong protests won't impact us? You might want to think again.